Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to class. We are in our day one of week 8. Happy New Month to everyone. So today, as at last week, we concluded on uh, handling some API calls and form submission and um, creating a flow for sign up and login, right? Using Redux and a context API. So you have a tax. We'll be giving a tax, a promotional tax that's coming. But please acknowledge if you can hear me. All right. So today we'll just look at some advanced concepts of handling modularity of our code base, right? So we'll be looking at HOC, higher order components today. Yeah, the name higher order components might seem like it's one tough nut to crack, but it's something that we are already doing. We are just going to be adding some little extras to what we have already learned, right? So basically, a higher order component or higher order components, right, are pattern in React that allow us to reuse component logic, right? So let's say we have one component which the HOC pattern helps us to reuse that component without necessarily changing the properties of that component, right? So there are functions that take a component as an argument and return a new component. So it's like what we learned when we're doing class component, right? Extending the class component. Right? When we pick the class component and then extend it to utilize the properties that are embedded in the class component. So this is like that's the concept that it works with, right? So it's all you are doing with higher order component, you are creating a pattern that you can reuse without having to actually mutate or actually change the properties, the um, the default properties of the parent of the main component. Okay, let's see. So the key concepts of HOCs, right? Enhancement, reusability, and composition, right? These are used to enhance existing components by adding new behavior and props, right? Then reusability, they promote code reuse by allowing you to apply the same enhancement to multiple components. So So based on this now, when we use HOCs now, you can apply these HOCs to different or multiple components. Use it to enhance multiple components, right? Now composition, they enable composition of components where multiple HOCs can be composed to create one complex behavior, right? So in essence, we can have like 2 or 3 HOCs and then merge those 2 or 3 to have a unique or a customized behavior on an existing component that we did not that we don't want to mutate, right? So let's use this analogy, right? So imagine you have a plain greeting card and you want to create different versions of this card, like a birthday card and a thank you card and maybe a holiday card, right? Instead of making each card from scratch, you can have a machine that takes the plain card and adds decorations, messages, or design to it. This way, you only need one plain card and the machine can customize it for different occasions, right? So it's like having one default card and then you want to create HOCs that will help you customize this card depending on how you want to use it or where you want to use it, right? You can extend that card and utilize it. we're using HOC, right? So let's use that very example to see the card example to see how we can create something. Okay, so yeah, let's go to code base. So I remember, you remember last class we wasted a little time on creating our code base. So I took the initiative of having it set up for you. I'm sure that's something that we can all do by now. So we'll just move straight into utilizing our code base. Okay, so I've seen some new some new names on the call. Were you guys waiting for a special invitation card to join? Madam Faith and Johnson. Okay, let's go on. Why you not responding? Okay, good morning. All right, so the first step we'll take now is to create our components, right? So let's go ahead and create a component folder. And for the component folder, and then we want to have within the component folder, we'll be working on two different components. We'll work on a table component and a card component. So let's call this table comp. And then create another folder and call it card comp. Okay. Where is everybody? Okay, so let's go ahead and create our card components, right? So for card components, we'll have a basic card component, which will be our main card component, card.jsx. And for card, RAFC. So for card, all we need is we need to initiate children as props. And then we want to pass children here too. All right. So we have this. Let's give it a little styling. So let's have a basic style for our card. Last name, let's give it P6 BG white. And then text gray. Text gray 800. Okay. Rounded and okay. All right, so we have our card component created, our basic card component created. So now we want to create a higher order components that we will use to modify this very component. So first thing, we want to create a component that we will use to customize the border around our card component. So I can come here and create a new file and say card with border. Excuse me, guys. All right, let's go on. Sorry uh, for the disturbance. All right, so for our card with we're going to call it card with border. .jsx. We can say refc. All right. So for this, so for this, we want to say for card with border, we want to pass wrapper as the argument. That is wrapped component as the argument that we want to utilize for our HOC. Then we want to return props. Okay. All right, then we now create this. All right. Are we following? So within here now, I want to now pass this component. This is a component that we are passing as props here, right? So now we want to say that we want to wrap this whole, anything we are doing inside here, any property we are giving to this div, we want it to wrap the component that this particular card width is going to be used to wrap, right? So this wrap now is just like saying children of this particular component. So we'll now pass the props into. So this way now, any props that we are passing into this very component is going to be transcending into the component that we are going to wrap with this component. Now we have card with border. So for border here, we now give that border design that we want to have appear, right? So we say border, so it will be visible enough, we'll give it 4, then border blue of 500, and then we can say rounded MD. So now all we are doing here is we are saying for the component that we are going to be wrapping with this HOC, this is a higher order component right now. The component that we are going to be using to wrap this HOC, or we are going to be wrapping inside this HOC, should have this property, should be attached to it now. So initially, if we display our card, right? Let's say we display this card in our app.jsx. Right? Ideally, we are going to get, so we display this card. So you see, we have the card. Our card is displayed, right? But it's displayed without border. So if we decide that we want to add this border now to this card, right? Yeah, so we'll come to our app.js and we'll say const enhanced card equals to card with, we'll say card with border, right? And then we will now say card. We have already imported card. We need to import this. All right. So as you can see now, we have our card with border, right? So this enhanced card now is a card that has been enhanced. This card that has been enhanced by giving it, by wrapping it with the card with border, HOC. right? So now if we want to display this card, we will now be displaying this enhanced card. So if we go to our UI, we should see the border around the card now. Is this strange? Do we understand what's happening? Can we go on? Okay, all right. So now using this now, we can now say, okay, let's add a little bit of text, right, to our HOCs, right? Give me a minute. Okay. So yes, okay. All right, so let me improve on this card style. We have basics, okay. There's no children yet. All right. Okay, let's go on. So we have card with text, right? With border, right? Let us create card with message. Another HOC that will contain message so that we can see the composition concept of how this is used, right? So if we say new and we say card with message dot JSX and enter RAFC. Okay, so for this now, we want to display a couple of, we want to be displaying messages based on which occasion we are trying to celebrate um with our friends, right? So let's assume it's a card that we want to give to our friends and it's based on occasions, right? All right, I just try to stay on the call, but it's fine. Okay, so for this, I'm now going to say, I'm now going to say card with message. I'm going to add the wrapper again. So I'm going to say wrapper or wrap component. Okay, and then I want to return message as props, and then I want to spread the props. Okay. Good. So we're going to bring this up here. All right. So we have our basic component done. We now want to utilize our wrapper. So we say for this, we want to use the wrapper to wrap the content that we want to display, right? So let's say we want to display a p tag and style it as text LG and then text gray 800 and then font of bold. Okay. MB of 4. All right. So with this now, we have our content and we want it to contain the message that we are going to be adding via props. Are we following? Now that we have this, we still want to include our props dot children. Okay. So who can explain what happens here? Because Who can explain what happened here? Yeah, I'm waiting. Okay, if that's it, do you all understand what is going on here in this component? Please, I don't want a silent class. I need you people to comment in the chat text box, please. So Enoch, since you understand what's happening here, you should be able to explain what's happening here. So unmute yourself.
Okay. From what I understand is that props the children is just basically any other thing that you add because you made the components to have an opening and a closing tag. So the props the just any other thing that you add inside the opening and the closing tag, like you can add a div or any other thing. And it will show up it will show up there.
Okay, so any other component that is attached to this, that is wrapped around this component is the children. But now, since we are not bringing in children directly, we're now bringing it as a prop, and now prop contains everything that you are going to pass as props, right? So based on this now, we're now saying, okay, inside these props, we want to display only the children of the content of props here. Do you understand? Are we good? Okay. So Janet, what do you not understand? Can I move? Janet, can I move? Okay, so based on this now, if you want to, yeah, so wrap component, this is just the argument we are passing. This wrap component now is the component we are going to wrap this whole thing with. Because when we wrap this thing with it now, we are passing it as an argument. Okay, let's go to our app.js. So you see now this card border, this is what we are wrapped. This is what we call the wrapped component. This card is the wrapped component because it is this card that we are wrapping with the card with border. Do you understand? So like now, if we want to improve on this card now by adding this message that we just created, right? We're now going to say this card with border is going to wrap card with message, right? And then card with message is going to wrap the card. Is that clear? Do you understand? So now we're saying this one should wrap this one, and this one should wrap the card. So we are passing this card with message and this card as an argument to this component. Then we are passing card as an argument to this one. So what happens here is this card with message modifies this card and creates a new component that's called card with message. Now, when we now wrap this card with message with this one now creates another new component that is called card with border. Now, if we now pass the most recent component, which is the outcome of this wrapping, into enhanced card, we can now display enhanced card like the final product our um, of our process. So if we come here now, we haven't passed any prop yet, so let's pass message. Let's pass message. And then we say happy birthday. All right. So if we do this, we should be able to see happy birthday in our card. Are we together? Let me see. So that way, even the enhanced card will have the props is mixtures carry, right? Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole point, because now this enhanced card is a combination of all this, or like a product of all this combination, right? So like I said, this very HOC called card with message modifies this card and creates a new component. So if I remove this now, it is that new component that will be attached to enhanced card. Now, as I've attached this card with border, it is now modifying this, the new component that this created will now be modified and given a border that is coming from this card with border, then attached to our enhanced card, and we can display it, right? Now, if you remember inside our messages, we have prop.children, right? So if we come to where we are displaying our card, and then we want to utilize the children property of our card, we can encapsulate this. And then for this case now, anything we write inside here, like this whole code that let me remove React logos. Okay, React logo is there. Invite logo. I don't need those two. I can use just the button. Okay, so for this now, this is now the children of this enhanced component. So it will display in the position where we have defined it to display inside our card with message wrapper, or HOC. Now, if we come here, we should have something like this. Are we following? Okay, good. So now, for let's have a scenario where the card component, right, maybe has a little bit more default behavior, or okay, let's just use props. So card with, yeah, so for here, let's say our card component has a little bit more information. Let's say we now have this card is a component with a message. Okay, let's have details. Details. Okay, and then we want to pass this here. Right. So we can have different kind of content here, design the whole card, and then we can have, why we are doing this particular two details and stuff like this is because we want this information to be dynamic, right? We don't want it to be static. So when we want to be able to change it anyway we are trying to use this enhanced card. So if we come here, we can still define our details here and say for details, wishing you many returns. Okay, so if we save this and we check again, details. Good. Okay, so we should have wishing you many returns appear on our user interface, right? Yeah, this one is just a default counter that's provided here. All right, so let's go ahead. Now, at the same time, you see that we can actually design this card and then just pass props into it without even having to pass the prop.children, right? And we can still pass our information into the card depending on how we want to use it. Because let's assume we want to use this same card and pass details, and we still want to pass details, but we don't want to pass the the children, right? So we can come here and do this, and we should still have another display. Okay, let's say congratulations, right? And then yeah, let's save this and see what. Okay, let's say congratulations. Okay, all right. So you see that we have two cards now, and this takes congratulations. This one takes happy birthday. This takes congratulations, wishing you. So let's change this. Wishing you success in your new position. Is that correct position? Okay. All right. Are we together? All right. So we can give this div and maybe just flex it. Let's justify between gap. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So are we good? Can we move forward? Are we confident with what we understand from what we've done now? Where is Janet? Janet, are you okay? Are you good? Okay. So let's keep going. So for this case now, all right. Okay, good. So for this now, we have created our HOC. We have modified our existing component, and we have seen it in real time display, right? Okay. All right. So let's see how we can do another use case before we call it a day. So let's create a table component. Are we good? Can we go? All right. So for table, uh, let's start with creating our basic table component, right? Oh no, let's start with a little bit higher. Let's start with our app.js. All right. So for table, we are going to assume that we have some components available. So let's say enhance table components, right? And then we're going to create table with loader, right? And then we are going to have table. Okay, so none of this is imported yet because they don't exist at the moment, right? So we are going to create our table. So for our table, we want to create some dummy data, right? So let's have some dummy data that we can use to create our table. So I'm going to take this out here. All right. So for data, let's say const loading, because we want to have a loading state, right? In this component that we are creating. Set loading. All right, use state true. All right, then we want to have our dummy data, const data, and set data. Equals use state empty array. Okay. So now let's create our data. Let's say for header, we say const header label name, then class name text left. Okay, we can duplicate this. And then have age. All right. Let's create our main content now. So for this main content, I want to simulate an API call. Use effect. So I want to simulate an API call for one purpose so that we can test our loading states. Is that clear? So based on that, I'm going to be using, yeah, so this is actually what I want to do. Okay. All right, so I would like to write it myself. So set timeout, and I want to say for this timeout, I want to set data. So I'll say content, and for this first content, I want it to be John Doe. Then I'll say class name. I want the class name to be text left. Good. Then for age, I want age to be to information here. So we can have Jane Smith, and then Jane Smith can be 31. Okay, so we have our data set up, right? So we want to do one more thing, set loading. So for this, we want to say set loading as false. Then we can now set our timer. Okay, I think this is not like difficult to understand so far. Empty dependency array. Okay, so this is not difficult to understand. I'm just saying that we want to set a timer, a timeout of 2 seconds. So load load for 2 seconds, then go off, then stop loading and display my data, then set the data. Do you understand? Okay. Now I'll now display my enhanced table. But like I said, we haven't created our enhanced table, so our table components generally, so we won't necessarily have what to display at the moment, but we are going to create all those things. And let's say table wrapper equals to width full. Okay, all right, so we have everything done. We have our loading state set as props, our data set as props, and our header set as props. And we're also passing a little style in here using props, right? Table wrapper. So now we are going to create our table components. Go ahead and create our table components. So first thing we'll create is table with loader, right? So let's create table with loader. And we'll say RFC. All right. So for our table with loader, we say wrapped component, right? We all understand what we are doing with wrap component. Then we want to return our props. And for our props, we are returning headers, data, our loading states, and our table wrapper. And then we spread our props. Okay, good. So now we can move this in here. Are we following? All right. So now for this component, we want to monitor using state, we want to monitor the timeout. Right? And then we want to also set timeout reached. Okay. I want to say false on default. So on default, this is false. Then we want to also check, we want to create a minimum load time, because I want a scenario where we must see our loader work. Minimum loading time reached. So we want to set it. We set minimum loading time, use state. Okay, and then this should be false. All right. So now we're going to use a use effect to monitor the behavior of our application now. So we say use effect. And for this use effect, we want to say const minimum load time loading time out should be equals to set timeout, and then we say are we together? Set minimum load time. All right. So for minimum loading timeout, we now say set minimum load time reached to true. And then we are saying the minimum load timeout should be 1 second. So no matter, even if our data exists, we must have, what we are doing here, we are saying there must be a load time of 1 second before you display our data. Are we together? All right. So now I can now say const data timeout equals to set timeout. So all these things I'm doing with timeout now is because I want us to see how useful, see the implementation of a loading state, right? So now in this case now for data timeout, right? I'm not going to say if loading. So that is if loading is true, right? I want to set time reached to true, which is this, right? Now let's handle our, so for this we are using 5. So if there's no data, we want to use 5, we want to set this, set time outreach to true, and let it take 5 seconds. Now we handle our data. I will say if data and data dot length. So that's if the data exists, length is greater than 0. Set timeout reached to false. Okay. Then we also want to clear our timeouts. And the timeout we are trying to clear here is this timeout. Okay, so now that we handled our data, we can now return our statement. So we say return clear timeout. We want to clear time out of minimum load time. And then we also want to clear timeout of data timeout. All right. So for our dependency array, we are going to be adding our loading state and data. Any questions so far? Yeah, so like I said, why I'm handling all this with this timeout is because we are not typically getting this data right now from an API, right? So we don't have like we don't have like an asynchronous function that is like bringing us data and helping us monitor the loading states or monitor when data has not arrived so that we can set a loading state for it. In this case now, we are simulating that API call by handling the adding of data using use effect, right, to simulate the API call. So based on this now, I'm only using set timer to monitor and make sure that we have our loading state display when we need it to display. Is that clear? So you can actually handle this without having to do all this, but the fact that I'm doing all this now should help you understand the flow. Yeah, so you just understand what we are doing. The fact that we are trying to just monitor, all I'm doing here is monitor the DOM and decide on what to do at a particular time. So I'm only saying I want to display the loading state compulsorily for 1 second. And then if the data does not come right after that 1 second, it should run again for another 5 seconds, right? Then if it does run for another 5 seconds and data now comes, right, you should now put it off, put the loader off, and then clear the timeout. Do you understand? Then ultimately, once these 5 seconds elapse, you should clear everything from, that is if the data does not exist. But if the data exists too, it should also still clear all the timeout. And that means removing the loading state, right? And allowing the data to display. Now, we'll say if loading, so if our application is loading, if it is on the loading state, and it is not within that mean loading time reach timeout span, right? We want to display the loader. Okay. So now we are now displaying our loader based on the loading states, right? Then we can now say if loading and then we say if timeout reached, we want to return no data. Let's use okay. We want to display no data to display. X enter margin auto. Let's say Y24. All right. And then let's give this last name text Excel. There's 500. That should work. Okay. All right. So we have this. Then we now say else. Else return loader. So now we have another else, but this else now is for our first if statement, which has loading, right? So for this loading now, if this loading exists, we should have this, right? So it's either this is displayed after the loading state has been displayed for the 5 seconds. If there's no data, it should return no data to display. But if it is still loading, it should display our loading state, right? Now, for this if statement, we now have an else that says return so I'm going to remove this. Okay, so this is saying return our wrapper component with the header as a props, data as props, and then table wrapper as props. Then we still need to spread our props. Okay. So with this now, we can move ahead and do other things that we need to do, right? Because we have returned our state, we return this, and we have this done. This component is good to go, right? So let's have a recap of what we did here again. Let's have a recap of what we did again. So from the beginning, we brought in our props like we did with the card component, right? Then we had some use states to manage our states to monitor when we have reached our both minimum loading time and when we have reached our data timeout, right? So we now created a timeout function within our use effect to handle the changes to make sure that our application loads for at least 1 second before displaying our data. Then in scenario where the data is delayed to load, it should take another 5 seconds to load, right? Now, if that 5 seconds loading produces data, it should display our data based on this. That means it should clear out the timer, the loading state and display our data, or ultimately clear out the timeout. Now, we now say if for this loading state, we want a scenario where if this loading states and we haven't exceeded our minimum time for loading, we want the loader to display, right? Then we moved on to say for loading, if this loading state exists, we want to handle all this, which includes either there's a timeout reached So if there's a timeout reached, we want to display no data display to display, right? Which is this is in a scenario where there is no data to display. On the other hand, if this timeout reached has not elapsed, right? So this has not been fulfilled. We want to display our loader. Now, if these two criteria have been have happened or have been fulfilled, and there is data to display, we now want to say, okay, for that case, let us view the data that is contained in the table component of our choice, right? Or the table component that we are wrapping with. So we have table with loader. Is that clear? So I can import our table with loader now. Good. So table with loader. Now we don't have our loader. So let's go ahead and quickly create our loader component. So let's say folder loader. There we can say within the loader, we say loader.jsx. Right? Okay. So for our loader, we are going to go ahead and just RFC. Yeah, we say let's have two divs. And then for the second div, we call it loader. Div class name spinner. And then class name loader. All right, so let's go ahead and start this new file, loader.css. And import dot loader.css. All right, so we have our style sheet imported. So let's go ahead and start our loader. So I want to start with the loader class and say display flex, justify center. And I want the items to be centered too. Yeah. Then height is 100%. Width is 100% too. All right, so let's go ahead and style the spinner. Now we say border. Let's use 4px solid. And then which color should we use? Color, let's use red. Okay. Then let's have width of 36, let's say 36px. And let's replicate that for height. Okay, and border radius of 50%. Okay, so we are going to see what it looks like when I'm done, okay? Border left of white. Okay, let's use line. All right, then animate. Animation spin 1 second is infinite. All right, so let's set the keyframe. All right, let's keyframe spin. Is everyone following? Transform, rotate 0 degree, 0 degree, yeah. Okay, then at 100 degree, transform 360. Okay. All right, I think this should give us our loader component. All right, so let's go ahead and import our loader here. Loader. All right. Okay, so we have our loader component. We have our HOC table with loader. So what's left now is our table component, right? Are we following so far? Okay, so without the table component right now, let's test out our functionality. Let's see what happens. Okay, so count is not defined in, okay. So we're still using count somewhere. That shouldn't be. All right, let's just comment out this code for now. All right, let's see again. Good. So you can see our loader, right? Good. So after loading, it throws an error. Let's see where this is coming from. Of course, in one of your React components. Okay, so let's implement our table, then we can monitor this error better, right? All right, but our loader is loading. Are we good? Can we move, guys? Okay, all right, so for our table components, we are just a simple table component implementation. So we'll just call it table.jsx. Okay, IFCE. All right. So for this case now, first thing we'll do is to bring in our props, right? We have header props. We have data, and then we have table wrapper, right? Okay, so are we together? Are we good? All right. So for this now, we can just go straight up and create our table. So let's say table, yeah, table wrapper. And then within we have table head, T head. Okay, so let's just look at it like this. Good. So we have our table head, which contains our table header component file. And then for the table header, we are mapping in the headers into the table header. We already know how to map, so we're doing mapping, then item, we can key it and give it a key. I'm not sure do we have ID as part of this data? No. So we can just give it index and key it with the index. Okay. Then then Enoch, you said tab 9 a sharp guy. It's actually writing based on how I usually write my code. So that's why it's an AI assistant. So yeah. So for table body, we are also mapping the data. And for the data, we are saying we are displaying row.map.cell, right? But this is not what I want, which is why I don't usually just take anything tab 9 supplies, right? So for this, let's key it first with index. Index, then index. Okay. Then we now say for TR, we have our index. So we want to map row. In cell content, yeah. Okay. So I'll just key it here again with index, cell index. Readability purpose. And then let's use row here. Okay. All right. So we have our cell.class name and then cell.content, right? So let's see what this looks like in real time if we try to use this table component. Let's give it a little styling. Yeah, so let's give it cost. Okay, I'm still with you guys, please. Yeah, so what I did here is just to provide room for me to utilize some custom styling here, right? I had to use backticks, convert it to a template later. So I'm sure that's something you guys know too. So yeah, I think we can move on. So we have our table done. All right. So for our table, we have our table done. We can now go ahead and pass our table into our HOC. So ideally, it should load then display our table, but it did not display our table. Header of map is not a function in table. Okay. So for some reason, the header is not being fed properly. So we have our header done here. And then for table with HOC, we have our header, of course. And header and pass down at the top properly. In the table, header is also being passed properly. Okay. So we did not destructure this, which is why we did not get the full property of the header, and that's why the header had nothing to map through, right? So if we test it again, we should be able to have our data now. What's the next error? Undefined reading map table 14. Line 14. Data exists. Okay, so let's use optional chain and see what happens. Okay. All right, so from this implementation, you can see that when I use optional chaining, it displayed, but we don't have any information in the table because for some reason our data is not being passed down. So let's debug that too. So load the display. All right, so we have not 14. So, okay, so this is where we have issue. I want to check why the data is not being displayed. Okay. All right, so let's keep the optional chaining and proceed. Okay, I'm with you guys. Let me debug this. Let's see how we can debug this code data. Then table with loader. We're passing the data correctly. Using this. Return data yes. Actually return the data, just the data. Okay, so where did that? Okay, all right. Can imagine. All right, thank you. So let's see again what happens now. We are still getting the error. At what line now? Enoch, you're laughing. Let's be sure that it's not everywhere we wrote date instead of data. Let's check table. Table is correct. Data, data, yeah. But we are not still visualizing our information. Data, okay. So let's check app.jsx if we have, so we have it correctly spelled here. Data, data. Okay, let's save and try again. Okay, we're in business. Okay, so as you can see, our information is being displayed now on in our tables, right? So let's say table auto for table. So we're going to convert this template literal. Okay. And then backticks. I want to say table auto. Let's just give it a little bit of styling. Or we can do this from where we are defining our table. Be with you. I'm with you. Let me just figure out a little complex method of styling this so that we can like test and see for our table. Okay, we can use that. Okay. Okay. So I still want to style table here. Item the class name. Yeah, what's that here? So item the class name will just convert. Excuse me. We'll convert to template literal and then backticks. All right. We can say x column x graph x Mm-hmm. All right, so let's remove this first and then see what we have. Okay, then let's go ahead and give this 100%. Let's just have weight of 100%. Then let's remove other things. Okay, we're good now. So we can now say for this, we want to have, or let's not go there, let's just have 50. Let's have for width, let's give width, let's give width 50%. All right. So 50%, let's see. What did we give it before? Oh, okay, let's maintain that. So for this, we're also going to replicate this style and give it its own style to make them match. Can remove this from here for now. And we should be able to have Mhm. All right, let's have it here. Okay, so now we can now go back to our app.js where we are using this and manipulate the width to 60% to 50% rather. Can say let's say 60%, 66%. So we come here and we say use 66%. All right, so that's too much. Let's have a little bit lesser. All right, and then we want want to come in here and give some margin. All right. Okay, so our table is looking good now. It's looking better. Yeah, we can do all that. Of course. You can do that from the wrapper directly from here and give it border here. Border for. Give it a little padding too, so it doesn't touch base. That's useful. Good. And what else? What else do you want us to add? And make it rounded a little. Rounded MD. Okay. Or let's say LG. LG, then BG white. But we have BG white, all our text will disappear. So let's go ahead and return our text color. So let's say for text gray is it's 500. And then for our header, we have text gray 800 from 900. Okay. Yeah. Are we good? Are we good? Comments. All right. So you see how the HOC can work, right? So now let's assume that we want to maybe give it some we want to do some addition to our styling, right? We can now come here and let's say we want to have another card. So we have another card, another table, right? That we want to have some new, maybe we want to have the same display, but we want to do little changes. So you can say green, BG green, and then, yeah, so we can say background green. And if we come, we should have another table that has a green background. Gray, 300. All right, so if you notice, this second card has a different background. Hold on. So you notice this second card has a different background, right? And we can even give it a border color. For this second one, we can say border blue 500. Are you following? So with this now, we're not tampering with our initial table component in any way. All we are doing is modify that. We're only modifying that table component, and then for the fact that we modified it, that HOC gives us room now to reuse it anywhere we want to use it and give it different properties that we choose to, right? So if we have another maybe we have data 2 now. Let's say we create another state and call it data 2, right? Data 2. We can actually have another stuff here to say set data to, right? And for data to, let's say Joe Brown and Margaret Smith. Okay, let's say Margaret Smith. And then for their age, let's say this is 21 and this is 42, right? So if we come here now, we should be able to have two different informations on all cards. Okay, hold on. We can't have two different information because we have not changed the data that we are passing to the second table, right? So if we change the data we are passing to the second table, we should have two different information on the two tables. Is that clear now? Do we understand? So is it only Enoch that we have in this class today? Daniel, do you understand? Faith, how about you? Faith, are you with us? Okay, all right, good. So based on this now, you can utilize the advantages of using this pattern of writing of reusable code structure, right? Is the fact that it will give you that room for reusability, right? Are you with me? To give you the opportunity to reuse your code, enhance your code structure, yeah, and also the composition, right? To also improve on the composition of your code. So is this something that we understand, or I understand you, I'll understand if you need to watch the video again, right? To maybe pace yourself and follow up with what we just learned, right? Go ahead and do that. I think that's actually an encouraged activity. So go ahead, watch the video again, try to understand what I've done. For the parts that you might not understand very well, try to get it right. All right. And then try to incorporate it into your code structure. Yeah. So just a poll, who is going to try this? Who's going to try using this in their code structure? Enoch, you won't try it. Oh, yeah, processing. No, you are the processor. Yeah. You are processing. Okay, nice. All right. Okay, no problem. It's all right. Go ahead and process it and just test it out. So start with that card. That card at least is is a simpler version of what we've done here. So start with the card, then you can now progress to visualizing the table and trying to utilize a reusable table component, and then implementing an HOC on it. Okay. All right. I think that's where we are going to call it today. So I look forward to our next class. Yeah, look forward to our next class. Take care of yourselves and have a great day ahead. Bye.